So the most important debate near the end of Charlie Kirk's life was not actually the debate he hosted between Dave Smith and Josh Hammer at TPUSA, but it was actually this focus group that he hosted with Turning Point chapter leaders, essentially debating the mainstream narrative of everything from Israel, Christianity, the Bible, and really a path forward towards restoration and harmony rather than destruction and chaos. And so we want to take a look at some of the most important clips of this discussion. And I will say during the live recording, my audio does clip a little bit. And so I've done my best to even that out for you all. So thank you for being with me and for your patience in this one. Let's get into it.
Okay, everybody, you're about to watch a discussion with several Turning Point USA chapter leaders from across the country. A spirited discussion about Israel, about AIPAC, about a little about immigration, about housing. It is real, it's raw, and it's going to probably bother people on all sides. But honestly, it shouldn't, because this is what's called a focus group. Getting down to what the consensus of this generation is. And I think towards the end of the conversation, we come to a really good path forward. One that obviously rejects all the Jew hate, but one that also says, you know what? You're not an anti-Semite if you question the current Israeli government.
So it's going to bother people on both sides, but it really shouldn't. Look, if you sell bullets, right? If you sell bullets, it's good to keep people fighting with each other, right? So then you sell bullets to both sides. And so bringing people together and destroying that tribalism is obviously a thing. And when I say sell bullets, I guess I'm speaking somewhat philosophically about ideological bullets that just keep people fighting each other and less agreement, less unity, more chaos, more division. So people that are in the market for more chaos and more division, they would not like what Charlie is doing. The other thing that he's doing is and I said this already, but he's sitting down with these students to bring his audience closer to them, to say, hey, you maybe you hear this from me, but you really need to hear it from them.
And if you seek to actually understand what Gen Z thinks about Israel, not these anonymous TikTok comments or not what you see on X, these are real people, they're real conservatives, many of which are real Christians, and they'll tell you exactly what they think about the hottest issue happening, I guess, on the planet that we're talking about. Watch this, learn, and if you get a little fired up, watch to the end, because I think you're going to love every minute of it. And if you
seek to really understand what Gen Z thinks about Israel, now, of course, this whole thing is called Am I Anti-Semitic? And so it centers around the topic of Israel, which is a very important topic, mostly because it's shifting, mostly because sentiment about Israel is shifting. If the status quo was being maintained, there wouldn't be what are we talking about? But because the status quo is being challenged, because you've got people like Dave Smith debating Josh Hammer and just exposing what seem to be like really lazy arguments, the sentiment is shifting. And so now everybody's going, okay, what's going on? What's up with Israel? Why have I been lied to? And I think maybe that's part of the point, is people starting to feel like, hey, I think you lied to me about something, and now I'm starting to worry that you've lied to me about a lot of things. And I think Christians in particular are an important group when it comes to this conversation, because Christians by and large support Israel. They support the idea of Israel. They support God's idea of Israel. And I think what the sentiment is shifting when people start to realize, oh, God's idea of Israel and biblical Israel are different from this thing that is being called Israel. And how did I buy into that? Like, let me reinvestigate this. And it doesn't mean that you land on, oh, I despise this group of people, but you do land on a point of like, well, it's like fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. There is sort of a caution. I think Charlie is onto this of like, don't swing the pendulum too far. Yeah, maybe there is deception going on. Maybe there's misrepresentation going on, but we do need to swing the pendulum back to a more realistic view of Israel, the Bible, whatever. But but let's not go so far and then create division just in a different way. So how do we come together? And actually, if I remember, there's a clip from Maiz that would actually fit into this really well, and I'll try to remember that I'm thinking about it and we can find it. All right, and so of course we're going to dive in, and we're cooking a stew here, right? So we're getting the water heated up. We're throwing in some ingredients, and it's going to really evolve. So that's kind of the introduction. Again, we're getting a sense of why Charlie was an important person, his approach, and why his approach was important, and why it's sort of eerily similar to in the life of Socrates and others. I mean, you could put Jesus in there, but I would say, as much as Charlie maybe was being transformed into the image of Christ, he's no Jesus. Let's not go that far, but maybe a Socrates, which is still high praise.
We're going to play a word association test. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear Israel?
Judaism.
Aid.
Netanyahu.
Tax dollars.
Liability.
Sacred.
Tax dollars.
Conflict.
Complex.
Controversial.
Scary.
Mossad.
So Mossad of...
Okay, this is where the conversation gets really important. Now, listen to what's not being selected. Now, this is why I think this video is heavily edited, and so they put out certain things, but what they put out was really interesting. So out of all of those word associations, out of all of those things that you just heard, and you can rewind it if you want, and I won't annoy you by doing that, sacred, holy, other words that popped out, Charlie picks Mossad. So Charlie goes with Mossad, and he wants to hear more. Why did you pick Mossad?
all the different things that would come to mind, why does their intelligence service come to mind?
Reminds me of the CIA. Just like the Central Intelligence Agency, they are out there doing things that none of us know about.
So to say Mossad first, that would basically imply your first impression is one of doubt. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
When you hear like Epstein, right, do you connect the Epstein issue immediately, like first connection in your mind, that's also connected to Mossad and Israel, or are they feel separate in your mind?
Separate.
I think there's a growing consensus that there's a connection there among Gen Z.
Yeah, I think that's definitely gaining velocity.
So he picks up on Mossad because he's saying, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is there's a growing skepticism because this is an intelligent agency. It's covert. It works in the shadows. It works behind the scenes. And obviously intelligence agencies kind of have to do that. That's part of their job, is to sort of figure things out before they get figured out. But what that does is it's like, okay, so where's the suspicion? Why the suspicion? So Andrew brings Epstein into the conversation. Now, is this a red herring? Do you guys think oh, okay, so we're talking about this sort of growing suspicion towards Israel, but let's take the argument ad absurdum. And go to one of the most ridiculous examples of this Epstein, and it's filled with sort of conspiracy theories. There's so much conversation around Epstein that how do you even navigate it? And I think there's a lot of that going on where it's even this is happening right now with Candace Owens. It's oh, this is so ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. Or even Nick Fuentes. It's you pick the most ridiculous example, and then you talk about that, and somehow it makes the conversation about an honest hesitation or an honest skepticism. It's well, we don't want to be crazy conspiracy theorists. So it's almost, I don't know that it undermines the honest skepticism, but it fits the two things together. So you say honest skepticism of a nation that seems to not have our best interests in heart, and then kind of a conspiracy theory that I don't honestly know what to do with it, And so, as long as you can link those two, you can sow kind of a seed of doubt towards that skepticism. Whereas you might have good reasons to be skeptical. So that was just my thought. Andrew does several of those things throughout this video, and I just wanted to point that one out. Okay, so we're making a stew here. Conversation turns to the economy and the shaky lines between U.S. and Israel. Now, one of the very interesting things that has been brought up recently is that, and maybe you fact checked this, give this to me in the comments. Israel and the United States of America do not have an alliance. They don't have a formal alliance. There's a lot of talk. We're told Israel is our greatest ally, but there's no formal alliance, which is why when America went to war, Israel didn't help. You know, we had help from the UK, we had help from all these other people that these other nations that actually have an alliance with the US. So when the US has to go and fight a war, they render aid. It seems that Israel doesn't get involved and render aid because Israel doesn't have an alliance with the United States. So fact check that. But it's just an interesting piece that has come out as more and more people talk about this. And I think it was, I'll try to remember who pointed that out, what channel pointed that out to give them credit. Very interesting.
Remain friends with them. They remain our ally. I just don't think we should be subsidizing them as much as we are.
When you talk about return on investment, I think that's an interesting way to frame it. The supporters of Israel will say they're doing a lot of America's dirty work, from intelligence gathering, things like that, within the Middle East. Is that compelling to you? Are you persuaded by that argument?
The reason why I'm not super persuaded is it's mostly because of here recently. We were kind of drug into it. We were negotiating, we were having negotiations, and then they struck, they killed the people we were negotiating with, and it kind of derailed everything and sped up the conflict a little bit.
It was the State Department's stated goal that we were working on negotiations with Iran. You can say they wouldn't have panned out. You can say that maybe they were imminently about to collapse, but we were still in active negotiation, and yet Israel launches Operation Rising Lion to go in and strike Iran while we're mid-negotiation.
How many of you guys would say you think Israel got us into that conflict? You would say yes? You would not say so much?
So this guy's smart. Whoever that kid was, I can't see what his tag says, but yeah. There's a reason this type of conversation should not be overlooked. These are young people, and you might be tempted to overlook them, and that would be a mistake. And Charlie Kirk did not. Charlie Kirk knew these are smart. These kids are smart. They don't miss it, and you need to listen to them. And if they're picking up on something, you need to pay attention.
I think we were willing to join that conflict. I don't think we were pulled in unwantingly as if we were dragged by a leash. We have the authority and the say of whether or not we want to be involved in that conflict. And I think we saw the prosperity that we would unleash if we joined the conflict.
When you think
Okay, and not only that, if you have an organization like TPUSA that is bringing together the brightest and like the student, like this, these students seem like they have a lot of potential. That would be my take. I don't know the organization at all. Never been involved. Don't know much about it. But it does seem like they have an ability to connect to some really bright students who would potentially be culture makers, culture shifters in the very near future, if not already. I mean, I think they probably are already because they're on campus having conversations like this.
about Israel's history in the region, and even with Hamas or Iran, these nations have sworn to destroy and annihilate the nation of Israel. At what point does it become, given the context, at what point are you going to be okay, or would you never be okay with the U.S. defending Israel's right to exist and essentially saving the country?
So Andrew, he throws in this Epstein thing. They're having this conversation about being somewhat suspicious of Israel and U.S. connection and all this other stuff. Well, what about Epstein? So then it becomes this question of this. It was this guy. I think so. So I'll replay this just to get.
I think it's critical that we remain friends with them. They remain our ally. I just don't think we should be subsidizing them as much as we are.
When you talk,
Okay, it's critical to remain allies, which I guess technically we're not, but it's critical to remain friends. But maybe just not so. Maybe we just need to not subsidize them so much. And then it's like, that's a very reasonable take. That's a very reasonable take. And then it's like, so do you think Israel has a right to exist when these other groups have avowed to like wipe them off the face of the planet and stuff? It's like, yeah, like I didn't say they don't have a right to exist. And I think that, I don't know, it's a funny one, and I think eventually, people are just too smart for this. But yeah, clearly you can be critical of Israel and critical of Hamas at the same time. Like, that's the false, and I think actually Charlie even brings this up, but it's a false dichotomy. It's like, well, if you are critical of Israel, that somehow means you support this other group that is doing bad things. It's like, look, let's say it's like this, right? It's like this. So person A is violent, and they're constantly fighting, and maybe they've even, killed people or injured people. Okay, person A. I'm critical of person A. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be violent. You shouldn't be hurting people. You shouldn't be a murderer. Stop fighting. Stop fighting. Person B, also fighting, also murderous tendencies, right? And they don't like you. Person A and person B don't like each other. And I go to person B and I go, hey, stop being so violent. And they go, well, does that mean you support person A? It's like, no, you're both being violent. And what I'm trying to support is peace. I'm trying to support peace. And you're both being violent. So I'm going to be critical of both groups or both people in that analogy, right? We're not that, like, people aren't that dumb. They don't think, in binaries quite like that. Yes. And I know the conversation tends to be that. That's why I think, again, Charlie Kirk started this whole thing about getting away from sort of TikTok and getting away from the algorithm and really talking to real people and having real conversations. I think to some degree we can have that online. But his point is there. It's like, in real conversation with real people, we don't think like this. If a country does something that's wrong, I can criticize that country. If another country does something else that's wrong, I can also criticize that. Even if both of those countries are at war, it doesn't mean I support the other country.
The U.S. defending Israel's right to exist and essentially saving the country.
First and foremost, they have a right to exist. They have a right to defend themselves. That's not my issue with it.
It's not the issue.
I can kind of give an analogy is that our house is burning down, and so is our neighbors, and we're trying to put their fire out before we put ours out. That's kind of how I view it.
So when you guys find out, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but when you find out that we're basically every year we send about almost $4 billion to Israel, does that make you upset, or do you understand it?
I would say upset, and the amount since 1948, it amounts to 319 billion adjusted to inflation. And I'd say that I can think of multiple things that we could have spent at home that would have been a better allocation of our taxpayer dollars. And I feel like this money could have been well spent in supporting an economy that would support our generation being able to afford homes rather than military strikes for Israel.
And again, not to be too critical of Andrew, I don't know any of these people, but he does talk down to them, whereas Charlie seems to talk with them. He says things like that a few times. He says, I don't know if you know this, but it's something to the amount of, and he gives the number of the aid that we give to Israel. Actually, this guy, no, can't see his name. He'll later quote some facts also. So it's like, hey, Andrew, they know, like give them the benefit of the doubt. He later will say, and I don't think I have this clip, but he'll talk about other countries that we give aid to, and you may not know the names of those countries, but the U.S. also gives aid to these other countries. It's like, yeah, I mean, I would assume that these kids know the names of more countries than I do. I'll just give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. They have access to more information than I do, or they can figure it out real quick. And so just that kind of, I'll call it a, air quotes, boomer approach to like talking down to young people was just something Charlie Kirk didn't seem to do. Now, again, I didn't watch everything that Charlie Kirk ever posted. I can't tell, so he definitely debated people, and I'm sure at times, maybe he had a similar sort of talking down tone to young people. But again, I think that's where Charlie was smart. Charlie is getting older. He's surrounding himself with younger leaders, and he knows that there's going to be eventually a disconnect as he becomes a husband and a father, and his life just takes on a different context than the life of a student in a university. And so he was already preparing for the fact that he might end up being disconnected from the conversation a little bit, but maybe he could bring up other young people again to to do this type of philosophy, and unfortunately, we will never know that. We'll never know if he would have succeeded in his mission if that was his mission.
What else? What would you want to see from their government? If their government came out and said, we have a 5-year plan to decouple from U.S. aid, would that help people's view of Israel? If they said, hey, we want to be self-reliant.
Yes. Look at that. It's like unanimous, nodding, body language. Everybody's agreeing. Like Charlie gets it. Like, look, it's like no hate, but we need to keep some of our money for ourselves.
Do you think that would help?
Yes.
If they're like, thank you for the help since 1948. We're a rich country. We've balanced our budget. Thank you. We're now going to decouple over the next 5 years and basically transition. Do you think that people would think higher of Israel? At least we'd stop talking about it so much.
Yeah.
Would you put that like as a primary?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say like that can kind of follow up with a lot of other things, like a lot of other even European nations. Like I feel like they were kind of like, even Trump had to like kind of even out NATO so that everyone was kind of paying the same, not the same amount, obviously, 5%. Yeah. But it just because like a lot of Americans do not want people freeloading off the United States.
And as you said, 319 billion being sent to Israel over all these years, that's comparable to the amount we've sent to Ukraine. And there's been a lot of controversy over that, and yet not as much over Israel. And people are judged very heavily if they critique that aid that is given to Israel. I'm pro-Israel. I support them. I believe Israel has a right to exist. I believe that they are the only state in that region with a right to exist. But why are we treating them differently than any other ally? Should we not be judging them, holding them to the same standard?
Your view is articulated by a lot of young people and held by a lot of young people, because let's now take a step back and let's now broaden it.
Charlie hears something and he goes, yeah, I hear that a lot. Like, essentially, that's what he's saying. I hear that the sentiment that you have right there is shared by a lot of young people. And that awareness, that knowledge, I think was a huge asset. And, again, unfortunately, that becomes somewhat of a threat. I don't want to speak to I don't want to use too intensive language, but I think that what was Charlie's asset became a threat to certain people who would have liked to keep the attention of the youth for themselves.
How many of you guys think when a lawmaker, a man I respect like Ted Cruz, uses the Bible to justify aid to Israel, doesn't even know the verse, do you guys think that's not the best way to approach this? Raise your hand. Okay.
I think Ted Cruz is Genesis 12:3. I think a lot of people see that as off-putting when you look at the New Testament.
Why?
Because I think a lot of people, they look especially at the writings of Paul, where he talks about how the new flesh is not the same as the people in the Old Covenant. The new flesh is everybody's, everyone's included.
Talking about Romans 9.
Yes, 9:6, yeah.
Are you Catholic?
Converting to Catholic from Judaism.
My next
from Judaism?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So you're you're ethnically Jewish.
Ethnically Jewish, yes.
And you have concerns about AIPAC.
Yes, I do.
I'm told that by some people that if I criticize AIPAC, I'm anti-Semitic.
I think it's ridiculous, yeah. I feel like it's right to have a concern for your country.
Do you think that that AIPAC represents, again, I'm not saying I believe this, but I think this is what you're saying, that it represents a kind of cutting in line of prioritization away from the American people?
Yes.
Would you guys say that's a fair summary? Meaning that, like, okay, we vote, we're citizens, but a separate group gets higher priority because of whatever reasons. You look like you want to chime in.
That the entirety of the idea of a PAC is to represent a group, but the fact that we're allowing a group that doesn't even represent American interests to influence the people who are supposed to be representing us, I have a huge problem with. And that's why I've said this before, and a lot of people don't like when I say it. I actually think there's probably like 20 representatives between Senate and House who I think are actually fully doing the work of the American people.
But when you hear that lots of other countries also are lobbying, do you think, that you probably don't know the names of those countries, but it's happening. Does that upset you equally, or is AIPAC just get all the press because it's so top of mind?
If those other ones are doing the same thing, of course, I do not think that other countries should be telling us how to spend, telling our representatives and people who are here to represent all of us that they should be focusing outside of the United States. America first. Thank you.
There's plenty of things that the Bible says that have been done throughout parts of history that certainly a nation state doing today we would see as a bit of a problem. When it comes to sending these, what you said, $300 billion
just with inflation,
to any foreign country, all I can think about is across our own southern border, we have an actual military in the form of the cartel that kill thousands of people, and that's leaving out the hundreds of thousands of Americans that have died to drug overdoses due to drugs that have come across our southern border. And it's insulting that that money goes anywhere else because we have such a huge problem here.
What else?
Okay. There's a lot in that clip. and I'll try to take it from reverse. Right here, things start to sound a little Nick Fuentes-y. Like, isn't America First the Nick Fuentes thing? Isn't that his podcast? You know, why are we subsidizing all these other countries? Somebody said, he says America First, and he's like, thank you. Right here.
Outside of the United States. America first. Thank you.
America First, thank you. If these kids get into government, there are people who have, like, they have worked for decades to try and bring America into some socialist, communist thing. I don't know. These kids are dangerous because they think this way. And they're smart. And despite what Andrew said, I did clip it. I didn't think I had this clip. He's like, you may not know the names of these countries, like Germany or something. Like, I don't know what countries he's thinking, like these kids don't know. I mean, of course, there are some countries out there that you're like, oh, yeah, where is that country or whatever? You know, maybe it's a stan, or maybe it's one of the, you know, East African, West African countries. There's some really small countries there in West Africa. It all kind of gets jumbled up. It's like, which one is that? But what country is he talking about? Like, oh, you probably don't know these countries. So anyway, there's that boomer take again. This was the moment that he's like, okay, wait, you're Jewish and you're converting to Catholicism? Now, I thought this was really important. Hold on. Let's.
In the Old Covenant, the new flesh is everybody's, everyone's included.
Talking about Romans 9.
Yes, 6, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about Roman. Yeah, yes, Andrew. I'm talking about the Bible. I'm talking about, like, I mean, not enough credit gets given to, like, covenant theology. Again, there's this, like, false binary of, like, you're either, like, you believe that the Jews are God's chosen people, or you're this replationist. Anyway, yeah. Replacement theology. I don't know how you frame that. Replacementist. It's like, no, well, what if I just believe the Bible is what it says it is, and the tribe of Judah is part of Israel, but it's not all of Israel. Anyway, I digress. Actually, I don't digress. That's really important. But so it's not just that passage. It's not just that idea is in like 2 chapters in Romans. It's all over the Bible. And then Charlie doesn't ask him, are you a Christian? He asks him, are you Catholic?
Are you Catholic?
Converting Catholic from Judaism.
Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, I could tell. He we're going to do a little body language. I can't, I have to try and capture it, because he has this like smirk. We might even, here, we're going to slow it down. He goes, oh, maybe that's too much. Maybe I'm slowing it down too much. Okay. Look at that smirk. I could tell. Yeah, I could tell. I could tell you're Catholic. So I'll as a non-Catholic, as a person who is reformed in my theology, I don't care if Charlie Kirk was converting to Catholicism. I think that's like, all right. I mean, I know like part of my family's Catholic. I had a conversation with Kale Zeldin on this channel. Kale's Catholic. It doesn't bother me the way it does some people. They're like, oh, Charlie wasn't converting to Catholicism. Like that would be like a bad, what's the point? I think the point is, and I don't know, I'd love some help on this, but it seems like normie evangelicals are easier to dupe into this idea that it's like Christian to support the nation of Israel. That like, and actually, freaking Mike Huckabee posted something, or a video of him went through X of just like, it's like this, there is a group of, I don't know, quote unquote Christians who think that like it's put your faith in Jesus and then put your faith in like what Netanyahu, he's like that. Like, I don't get it. the nation of Israel goes by the same name as the nation in the Bible. The two are clearly not the same. That's like a no-brainer. They're in the same location. It's like they occupy the same geography and they call it the same name, but clearly very different. And I think that the idea that Charlie would be leaving kind of the normie evangelical group and going into a more orthodox Christianity was scary for some people. And I don't know this to be exactly true, but it doesn't, like, again, Reformed theology would look at covenant theology and we would say, yeah, like there's no ethnic group that is like God's chosen people. Like, that's actually kind of a weird idea. Like that actually sounds like a racist statement. Like if I'm a member of this ethnic group and my ethnicity is God's chosen people, then if you're not part of that ethnic group, and I've had conversations with people who have said that as a Gentile, right, my soul is like qualitatively different. Like my soul is different because it's a Gentile soul. It's like, guys, you sound pretty racist. I'm just going to tell you. You probably go, that's not racist. No, it's not racist. It sounds pretty racist. And you have to admit that it sounds pretty racist. But covenant theology would say, well, no, God has a plan for everyone, every person. God has a plan for every person. And these covenants nest within each other, right? You can go all the way from Noah through Abraham to David and into the new covenant and all of that, right? Christians, we do not stop at the circumcision of the flesh. We move on to the circumcision of the heart. Circumcision of the flesh is that's like Christianity light. You can disagree, but let me know why. Sorry, that was rambly and probably incoherent, but I thought that was a really important point of this interview, that this kid is moving from Judaism to Catholicism. Charlie points that out. And maybe he's nominally, he says he's ethnically Jewish. He's raised in sort of a Jewish household or something like that. But this was the moment. That little smile from Charlie was, I thought, a very important one. Now I've probably missed any other important parts to that clip, but there it is. We're going to move on because I'm limited on time here. Charlie shares that he's working on a new path forward.
Do you guys see Jew hate increasing amongst your generation?
I think that there's a lot of collusion between criticism and hate. I think that there is legitimate hate out there, but a lot of criticism is being framed as hatred, or you don't support this because you're criticizing it. And that's I think that that's a little inseparable from what the left
do you guys
does.
think it's anti-Semitic to say you don't like Bibi Netanyahu?
No.
No.
I don't believe so.
There is a rise of Jew hate, but it's not the majority mover. I think the majority mover of Gen Z and Gen Z conservatives is exhaustion.
That is a huge point. And I've tried to make this point before, and I get some pushback. I don't think the world is as anti-Semitic as some people maybe want you to believe. Maybe they feel that it is, right? And I obviously would be someone who would lack that perspective as being a non-Jew. Like, I could sit here and say, yeah, the world's not really anti-Semitic. But of course, I don't, I'm obviously not seeing the world through the eyes of a Jewish person, but it's maybe it's not anti-Semitic. Maybe there's other things going on, and we've been conditioned to expect it. And I think that's actually where it goes. But the idea is exhaustion. That's really the important thing. I'm exhausted. I'm freaking exhausted by constantly being put into a binary that I don't think I fit into, being tribalism, pitting against each other. I'm exhausted. I'm over it. I don't support these, wars and globalism, and I'm moving on.
Precisely.
I mean, again, there is an isolated weirdo. I hate Jews. We don't like that. No one in decent society wants that. But instead, it's kind of can we just, I don't know, make it so I can buy a home, or deport people?
Exactly.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
You're not anti-Israel. You don't wish them harm. you're not, like cheering on Iran, but you would be called an anti-Semite by some people for saying this.
And I think that's ridiculous. I don't hate Jews because I think a nation should defend themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I think that's the most ridiculous thing ever.
I feel like it's becoming like the word racism. Like, we just disagree with them, so we just have to call them a name. I don't think they're actually anti-Semitic. I think people just can't agree with them and they can't prove them wrong, so they just throw a word out and be like, you're anti-Semitic because you think that we should stop sending our money there.
These kids are smart, man. You're not gonna, like, they are becoming resistant to propaganda. I think that's what I'm seeing. Like, they've become there's so much information in the internet age, and you're sifting through so many different opinions, and you're able to kind of inoculate yourself against the BS and move on. It's like, no, not racist. And the more you use that term, the more inflated it gets, and actually the more meaningless it becomes. So if you're going to use it well. Stop misusing it, because there's actual real racism out there, and when it happens, we need to be able to use that word and call it what it is. But if you use it for everything, then when someone's actually being racist, the word doesn't mean as much.
I do see more like general disdain towards, just being honest, Jewish people.
That's correct.
Just because they're constantly being told that you hate Jews, and it's like, fine. If you're going to say I hate Jews over and over and over again, like, if I'm going to be convicted of the crime, I might as well do the crime. I fear the same thing happens with all the talk of race. The more we talk about it, the more racism actually happens.
This is like, I try to tell. Thank you for saying this.
This is one of the other moments where Charlie just like has a visceral reaction, and you see him building up. I'll try to mute it and go back. Like, as this kid is talking, what's his name? Hayden is talking. It's like, you watch Charlie's face. Just watch him build up to this moment. And now I have it muted, but just watch his face. Just watch. He looks over it. He looks over at this group. He looks over that group. He's watching the crowd's reaction. He makes eye contact. Then he looks over at Andrew. And Andrew reacts. And he's like, look, I think we're not racist, but I think you're creating racism the more you talk about it. That's basically it. And then Charlie's like, thank you. Thank you. This is the Jerry Maguire moment where he's like, Dorothy Boyd, thank you. Thank you for saying, look, if you keep ramping up the rhetoric, you're not going to eliminate anti-Semitism. You're going to increase it with this group of people. They're tired. They're burned out. They don't want to have the conversation. They want to be able to buy a home. Tell me how I'm going to be able to afford a home. Stop calling me a racist.
The more racism actually happens.
This is like, I try to tell. Thank you for saying this. I try to tell these people, and they're like, we must get more aggressive.
These people.
And so, like, let me ask a question. People said what Tucker said is anti-Semitic. I don't hold that view, but it's like a lot of people on Twitter are like calling us out and like, whatever. That's not going to happen. But if we were to cancel Tucker, would anti-Semitism increase or decrease?
I think increase because...
Increase. Okay. So he does a couple things. He says they. I don't know who they are, his donors. I don't know. He's like, I try to explain this to them. And then he says that's not going to happen. Like, if you try to cancel, I didn't quite pick up. And again, this is why the video being kind of heavily edited is a little unfortunate. What is he really responding to? If there was something clipped out, it's like, that's not going to happen. I don't know, and this is like there's like 10% of me wonders if he's thinking about people becoming violent, like trying to eliminate Tucker, Candace, Charlie Kirk, etc., etc., etc. And he goes, that's not going to happen. And I don't know. Maybe again, if you want to rewind it, let me know what you think. That moment was like, there's a lot that happens in a few seconds. There's a lot of body language. If you're watching the people that at least that we can see, as other people are talking, you're watching Charlie's body language, and then he's like, yeah, I'm really trying to get people to understand this. If you keep pushing, then you really are going to create a dissenting attitude towards this group of people. Like, you're going to create it. By saying that you want to prevent it, you're actually going to create it. Now, a total side quest to this would be the Tovia Singer video that I did 100 million years ago. I think it's actually a live stream. You look at the two servants in Isaiah and what Tovia Singer is saying. He's saying that leading up to the final days, there has to be a growing dissent towards Jews in Israel. He's saying that has to be. And so part of the eschatology of at least some Jewish people is, well, we have to be hated first. We have to be hated first, and then the Messiah comes, and it's like, so what are you trying to do? Are you trying to help people understand your position so that we can all get along? Or are you trying to pit people against each other? Because I think I get the feeling that this group of young people, they're not stupid. So if you're trying to pit them against each other because of their ideas, I think you're going to create more. They're just going to be frustrated. I don't know. So there's just like this weird, behind the scenes type of thing that might be going on that, probably, gets me in trouble.
Because that means any supporter of Tucker Carlson's statement therefore makes them anti-Semites.
Yeah. So again, this is sort of the same thing with the Jeffrey Epstein thing. It's like, oh, you're associated with this crazy conspiracy theorist,
Association.
Guilt by association.
But the binary that's presented, if you don't passionately talk about it, you are a hater. That's probably destructive for everybody involved. So for me, I'm trying to find this new path, which is, I love Israel. I visited there. My wife and I had the best experiences ever. I saw where Jesus rose from the dead and he walked on water. But also, I'm an American, and I represent a generation that can't afford anything, and that we are like flooded with illegals, and no one speaks English. And I think we need to have the prudence to reject the Jew hate. Like, okay, we're not going to put up with that. That's dumb. But also, if you call everyone an anti-Semite, if they don't take a puritanical view of the Netanyahu government, then I think it's bad for everybody.
So would you guys all basically safe to say welcome us not talking about Israel nearly as much?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Here's what I want you to talk to me about. I want you to talk to me about how I'm going to afford my education and get a home and build a family. What is the most... Okay, so this is... Charlie says, I'm working on a new path forward. A path that rejects Jew hate, but also allows me to say, as an American, I don't think we should be supporting these causes or these other nations. We just can't afford it anymore. It's not anti-Semitic. It's not anything other than like basic math. I can't afford to do this, so I'm not going to do it. We can't buy everything on credit, right? And I think that that's what made Charlie a threat. I honestly do. I think that, I mean, again, going back to Ephesians 6, there is a religion whose sacrament is chaos and death. It is the anti-religion. It is the religion of, I mean, essentially the Antichrist, right? So Jesus, he institutes this faith, this, if you want to call it a religion, I guess you can, that says, die and you'll have new life. And then there's this other religion that just stops at death. It's just like, no, I live, and if you're not on my side, then I'm sorry, you don't live. That's it is antichrist in its ideology, because Christ points through death to new life. And it's a life where Judah embraces Joseph. That's something that I don't understand why that's a threat to certain people. And what I mean by Judah embracing Joseph, again, you just sort of have to work through my sort of podcast theology here. Go all the way back to when I was doing the Messiah ben Yosef stuff. This nearly a year ago, I did several videos on it, but you see that Joseph foreshadows the ministry of Jesus. He takes a Gentile bride, like he saves his brother, right? He rescues the Gentiles, right? He rescues Egypt, and the overflow of the grain feeds his brothers, right? And that's the ministry of Jesus. He goes to Judah, he goes to the Judean people, but he also goes into the northern tribes of Ephraim. And in particular, John's gospel, I think I did this. I think I talked about this with the Jews in John's gospel. I think I talked about this. In the middle of John's gospel, at the resurrection of Lazarus, again, resurrected kingdom, right? Death, but then new life. At the resurrection of Lazarus, it says that he no longer walked amongst the Judeans, and he went to the city of Ephraim. Ephraim is Joseph's son. So in Joseph's life, he embraces his brothers. That includes Judah, the brother who betrayed him. I mean, all of his brothers betrayed him, but Judah gets an important point in the story. And so he takes Judah and he embraces him. And there's forgiveness and there's restoration. So the kingdom of Jesus is a kingdom where Judah and Joseph, or his son Ephraim, are seen as coming back together. Charlie's not using that language, but that's essentially his path forward is a path where it's funny. I think what we're told as Christians, we're told that we need to sort of like this is it's like basically a heresy. It's like Christians are grafted in to Judaism, which is totally not what the Bible says. The grafting in is to be grafted into the trunk and the root, who is Christ. And the point is that like Judah needs to be grafted back in. It's not that Christians are grafted. I mean, Gentiles are sort of quote unquote grafted in, but then the branch that has been cut off needs to also be grafted back in, and that's the hope. Christians are not grafted into Judaism. That's a fallacy. Christians who have been grafted into Christ are now, in a sense, looking towards the grafting in of all Israel. That's why Paul says all Israel will be saved. So again, sort of taking these rabbit trails and probably not being very coherent, but I thought that this path forward, he's working on a new path forward. That is critical. That is critical. And then you have to ask yourself why unity would be a threat. It's only a threat if you're part of a religious system or an ideological system that thrives on chaos and disruption and disorder and destruction. Lots of D words there. That's the threat. Unity is a threat to people who live in the world of chaos. I don't remember what this next clip is about, but we'll get to it. I guess I could read my heading there. What's the most persuasive pro-Israel point, and who represents? Okay, so we'll actually go full circle here. So listen to this.
Who represents you best outside of Trump? What?
Okay, so who represents you best outside of Trump? Okay, what? Yeah, this is where Charlie and I depart ways. As much, I voted for Trump, but whatever. And then he gets pointed to. So this guy says, "You represent me. You, Charlie Kirk, you represent me. You listen. When you speak, I hear my own voice echoed back to me. You represent me." This is Socrates, even Francis Schaeffer to some degree. People who have the ability to engage with emerging generations of young people are sort of a threat to a system that really, okay, think about this. Sorry, this is a little bit of another diatribe. If you have a shaky propaganda, like if the lies that you're telling aren't really working out so well anymore, you have to start indoctrinating people earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. You really have to get them while they're young so that they'll believe the lie as they go into their adult culture-shaping life. Does that make sense? But if someone comes in and interrupts that indoctrination process and disrupts it and pops the bubble and moves the Overton window or shifts the narrative, frick, man, now we lost him. Now we lost an entire generation of people, and we cannot afford to lose an entire generation of young people because we've been working on this for decades. That's why this guy, Peter is his name. Hey, Pedro. That's why Peter, pointing at Charlie Kirk, that's a profound moment. Says, hey, outside of Trump, whatever, who represents you? Charlie Kirk represents me.
Well, thank you. That's very
I
kind.
don't do that just for the sake of it either. I mean, you're here involving us for a reason, because we are the important group. We're going to inherit all of these issues.
The reason we're doing this focus group, and Andrew will attest, I've been trying to tell them that there's an earthquake coming on this issue and in the country, and they don't believe me. So I'm like, why don't you just hear it from people?
If we don't start getting these young people from our generation or the next generation above us into Congress, then we're going to start losing.
When this debate pops up on your social media feed or on campus, what is the most persuasive pro-Israel point that you have seen or heard?
Talk about more about how they help us with intelligence, especially with this new conflict with Iran. If you want to use that, say like, hey, Israel's very helpful in us deflecting with Iran and give us influence over them because we can have more intelligence.
Do you find it persuasive when the Israeli tourism board is bragging about how many gay pride parades they have in Tel Aviv?
No.
Does that make you more pro-Israel? What else is persuasive for you?
I would try to educate about Islamic terrorism. I think that's major, especially with the fact that we lived through 9/11. I think a lot of people in my generation don't understand how big of a situation it was. We know nothing about it.
I think maybe one other point maybe is about the Holy Land as well. You could make a point going to the Holy Land, filming videos and say Israel's a better protector of the Holy Land than if there was a Palestinian state.
The argument I make more than anything else.
I was going to follow up on that.
That's my biggest argument. Keep going.
When the United States is like,
yeah, so that's another point. Adam, maybe I clipped it out, but he does talk about how connecting to sort of like the ancient holy sites and the ancient wisdom is key. And he has another one of those sort of visceral reactions where it's clear that this is important.
A mostly Christian country, not all Christian obviously, but a mostly Christian country, a lot of people can sympathize that is the Holy Land, that is where Jesus Christ lived and was crucified.
And rose from the dead, yes sir.
Islamic terrorism that's a better messaging because it connects Israel, it's a threat to Israel and the United States together at the same time.
One of the conversations we've had is that this Holy Land thing, there is a hunger for the Holy Land, for the old things.
It's the key.
Yeah, the old things, the ancient things. I think so much of modern life feels very transient and new.
And also just the stability of it for being there for 2,000 years. And also the fact that it's really just been the bedrock of traditionalism. And I think you talked about in your speech about how there's a lot of liberal evangelical churches. So it's like, how can I get to a more traditional style of life?
I mean, I'm Catholic as well.
Okay, and they go back to the Catholic. Okay, yeah, again, the normie evangelical church is sort of, I don't know, it's lacking in inspiration or whatever. Let me see if I can calm my dog down. But in that moment, the other guy says, yeah, I'm Catholic too. All right. Man, yeah, I think that for a long time, Christians bought into this idea, like the Mike Huckabee idea. It's like, you really do have to support. Now, if you're a country, if you're a political group, if you have an ideology, and you have a religion that has over 2 billion people that claim that as their religion, you have a huge political force at your hands. And you say, okay, well, according to our religion, according to our holy books, you have to support X, Y, and Z political system, X, Y, and Z country. Yeah, you that's a huge political resource. Hold on a second. Okay, thanks for hanging in there. My neighbor's dog is outside, and they're throwing the ball, and my dog is jealous. So. You would not want to lose a political resource like 2 million, people who are fairly zealous, right? They're religiously committed. Like, they've changed their lifestyle for the sake of this religion. And if you can say, hey, sorry, but cults do this a lot. It's like, hey, because you're this religion, you also support this political group. It's like, geez, dude. So I think that's why the shift away from normie evangelicalism into a more orthodox Christianity, I think that's why some people panicked that maybe Charlie was becoming Catholic. I don't, even as a Reformed person, it doesn't cause me to panic,
And one of the biggest things that I do like is that Israel holds the roots of a lot of Western religion, and that it is critical for us as Americans to keep them.
So this is very important, and we're going to have to close here, is that American evangelicals tend to be very, very pro-Israel. Younger Catholics tend to not be. But what you're both doing, soon to be Catholic, current Catholic, you're saying, hey, if you talk more about the Holy Land, the place, the environment, the reality, the artifacts, right? The discoveries, where Christ our Lord bled on, in the Catholic Church, the Via Dolorosa is a big deal, right? It's huge. The Stations of the Cross. Catholicism is a very tactile religion. You think that actually is more persuasive than any theological argument being like, this holy land must be protected so that we can access, that we can worship, that we can prove, and we don't want a bunch of Muslims taking this place over like they did with Bethlehem. Do you think that is a winning argument for evangelicals, for Christians, more so than gay pride parades in Haifa?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, guys.
So the secular state of Israel is going to lose. They're going to lose ground, because if they want to stay secular, then they are going to lose what's important to this group of Christians. I think that is key. And I think Charlie was really working on something here, and it's really sad that someone decided that was too much of a threat. Let me see if I can find this clip from Ash Maiz. I believe he has, not Gates, Ezra Gate, I think is the name of the channel. It's like a side channel that he started. And I could go through my watch history, but that might be too much. I watch way too much. Search watch history. Okay, Ezra, maybe. Maybe I'm spelling Ezra wrong. Probably. Nope. Okay. Let's just do all. Let's let me go. So hang in there with me here. He made a really important point that has to do with it's not just like, oh, Christians are being lied to. I think I've tried. His point is actually that Jewish people have been lied to. And again, we are talking about bringing Judah back into the family, like Judah and Joseph. So let me see. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. We could just watch at least up into that point. I don't even think it's 1 minute and 30 seconds long. Or it's not even what am I trying to say? I've been live streaming too long. So again, Ash, here we go.
Gate. Some of you might already know me. My name is Ash, and some of you might not. This might be the first time that you're seeing me. But I was invited to come and present and help run the start of this new project. It won't just be me, but I will be doing a lot of my work here. For those of you who don't know, we will be focusing on demonstrating that the claims of Christianity, Christian theology, are in fact deeply rooted in the Hebrew scriptures. Not only that, but that they are validated and verified by early Jewish thought and early Jewish writings, rabbinic and midrashic literature, before the massive polemics began to distance and inoculate the Jewish community from Christianity. So again,
that's a huge point. Christianity is consistent with the Hebrew scriptures. Christianity is even consistent with early Jewish content and later Jewish content developed to try to distance Christians and Jews. That, I think, is an important point. So I can link this channel or this video if you guys want to check it out. There's not much on his channel. I mean, his other channel is back up and running, and so it is good to check out as well. That's where we're going to call it. That's where we're going to call it. Because I think if I keep going, I'm going to be more incoherent. So, to recap, Charlie Kirk is sort of reliving the life of Socrates. I think that there were many things in the final months and weeks of his life that were very important. I think there were several podcasts that were important, but I think this video talking to Gen Z, Turning Point USA chapter leaders, young leaders who are clearly very smart, was a really important piece of the puzzle. And I think it showed clearly that Charlie Kirk was a person capable of dismantling, challenging multi-generational levels of propaganda. Again, if you're telling lies and people aren't really believing your lies anymore, you got to start earlier and earlier. And so this idea of, impiety towards the gods of the state, TPUSA started as more of a secular organization. Charlie becomes Christian, and then seems like he's even moving more into Orthodox and even maybe Catholic Christianity. So he's moving from secular to Christian, and then away from like normie evangelicalism. And with that, seems like he's distancing his support for Israel, or it's becoming more nuanced and more clear. And yeah, he would be able to obviously, I don't want to say help young people navigate those nuances. Let's say it like that. And so this video becomes very, very important with that. So impiety towards the gods, and then corrupting the youth. That was the accusations labeled at Socrates. So this idea of corrupting the youth, I'm using that, ironically, I think he's actually helping young people navigate these issues. And yeah, we are in a battle. We are in a battle of words. And so, man, when somebody has an ability to navigate topics and it speaks eloquently, again, I didn't really listen to everything he put out there, but seemed like an eloquent, very smart person who is unfortunately no longer with us. And so with that, we need to say adieu for now. Housekeeping, I think I'm going to try to live stream on Thursdays. It was Tuesdays. I'm going to try Thursdays. I'm going to try to be more regular. I think I'm at a space in life where I've settled enough in the house where I can do this. Sometimes it's very cathartic for me. I have lots of ideas floating around in my head. Thank you for bearing with me as I sort of offload some of those ideas onto the internet with you. I appreciate your feedback, your contribution, as well as some of this is clearly me developing my ideas. I'm not coming to you as some sort of expert who has it all figured out. I am coming to you as a interlocutor, as a co-laborer who wants to understand things in a way that's meaningful and helpful. And so if you want to support the channel, here's one thing I would ask you to do. Go to this video, because I think it's a good one. It's actually a clip from last week's live stream. And if you want to bump it up in the algorithm, I don't know why it's sort of lagging in the algorithm, but there it is. It's a clip about Joe Rogan, the Bible, etc. And you can go to that or any of the podcast playlists that I have on my YouTube channel. And yeah, I got more work to do, but thank you for now for being a part of this, and I will catch you in the next one.